and leukemia. And we also have the toxic proteins. Mice fed engineered soy have damaged liver. There's a whole series of experiments that have been done showing all kinds of organ damage. I won't show you them all. Mice fed engineered soy have damaged testicles, uterus, and ovaries. And I'm just going to finish this part here with two studies that really, I don't want to use the word controversial because it's not correct, but they really make the biotech companies really mad. And this first one, this is the first alarm bell that was raised in 1998, 2 years after the first commercialization. This was done in Scotland. The European Union, when Monsanto came to Europe and said, we want to commercialize our crops, in Europe, the European Union said, well, we are not the USA here, we're going to do some testing. And they gave a large grant to one of their top scientists who worked at the Royal Institute in Aberdeen in Scotland to put together a protocol of research so that to make sure that he could test those crops without getting any false positive or any false negatives. And he designed a protocol, being a toxicologist, designed a protocol to do such thing, and he fed his rats engineered potato. And after 4 months, just less than 4 months actually, he saw a lot of organ damage. Kidney, liver, intestine, brain, etc., etc. And he decided to abort the experiment. And he went to his research director and said, this is what I see, and I think we should alert the public. With the agreement of his director, he went on TV and made it public. And there were phone calls from Washington to London, to the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, to the Royal Institute. He was fired the next day. This is one of the top scientists in Europe. He was fired the next day. His lab was closed. His team disbanded. His papers confiscated. He had a gag order. The whole scientific community in Europe went really nuts. There was a big scandal. You don't treat a scientist that way. Even if he committed the sin of going public before peer review. He was given his papers a few months later, and he published his result. This is the stomach lining of the animals. He published his result in the most prestigious medical journal, The Lancet. And you can bet it was peer-reviewed. And this is published a year ago in France, where I did my undergrad, long time ago, showing organ damage. And this is an interesting study. Again, when Monsanto came to France saying that, we want to commercialize, the French government said yes, but we have to see some data. You have to do a study. So Monsanto put together a toxicology study. They put together a toxicology protocol. You need this many repetitions. They chose the strain of rats they wanted to work with, and they showed that, and yes, that was agreed. They did the study for 3 months, and after 3 months, they analyzed the results, and there was no effect of feeding the animals engineered grain. And so the plants were registered to be commercialized, accepted by the regulatory agency in France. And one of the scientists was a bit intrigued after what had happened with the previous study I showed. So he asked to see the data, and that was refused. Of course, this is all top secret. Being in France and not in the USA, he went to court and he was able to get the results of the study, and he reanalyzed the study and showed that there were some significant differences between the treatment, showing that basically there was sign of toxicity to some organ, particularly the kidney and the liver. And when he confronted the industry and the regulatory agencies with it, they said, oh, yeah, but that's not biologically relevant. If you're a scientist and you do studies like this and you analyze your results with statistical science, you know very well that this is the unacceptable response. If something is significantly different, if treatments are significantly different, there's a clue. Of course it is biologically relevant. You can't get away with reinventing science. So he decided to repeat the experiment that Monsanto had done. The same protocol, it was a toxicology study, the same protocol, the same number of repeats, the same rats. But instead of doing it for 3 months, he decided to do it for 2 years. And the experiment went on. After 4 months, there were clear signs of toxicity to the kidney and the liver. But he kept going. He decided not to abort the experiment. He kept going. And after less than a year, some of the rats showed breast cancer, mammary tumors. And that went on, and some of the rats died, etc., all the way to, and maybe some of you have seen those horrible pictures, and that's why the biotech industry really goes nuts with it. As soon as the paper that was published, within hours, well, what I call the corporate science community in England went down on him, saying that he had chosen the wrong strain of rat. He was repeating the same study. His protocol was wrong. He didn't know what he was doing. He had repeated the same study. The number of repetition of his experiment was absolutely not enough to show cancer. He was not doing a cancer study. He was doing a toxicology study. He was repeating the study. He has answered absolutely every critic. And his name has become mud. I think I'll stop here. You get my drift. I'm not done. I'm not done yet. This was the bad news. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about Roundup because I find that a little bit alarming. Roundup was invented in 1964 and patented as a chelator, as a chelating agent. A chelating agent is a molecule that grabs onto metal ions. Metal ions are absolutely necessary in your body and the body of every living being. Metal ions are absolutely necessary for most of our proteins. Most of our proteins are enzymes, and they need a metal ion to function. You all know that you go to your doctor and he looks at you and he says, "You're a bit pale, I'm going to do a bit of blood work. Oh, your iron is low, you need to take some iron supplements." And the iron is there because you have a molecule in your blood, which is very important, it's called hemoglobin. And the hemoglobin molecule needs an iron ion in the center to do its work, to be able to exchange oxygen. And so if you have next to hemoglobin a molecule that competes for the iron ion, you're in trouble. So a chelating agent is very useful and very good if you want to clean up water or some industrial processes. It is not necessarily a good thing if it is in your food. Glyphosate was also discovered to be a broad-spectrum herbicide and patented as such, and then Monsanto bought the patent and made history with it because it's been incredibly successful. And then a few years ago, they patented it as an antibiotic. For the same quality, it is a chelating agent, and it can impair so many enzymes that it can kill bacteria and many other organisms. As a young student in graduate school, when Roundup was a new product, I was told that it was very safe, and it is true. It has very low acute toxicity. And it is a very broad-spectrum herbicide, and it works by impairing, at least that's what was said at the time, it works by impairing an enzyme in the shikimate pathway, which is in the plants, and it is absolutely not in animals, therefore we are completely safe. But we forgot that the bacteria can be affected. And remember what I said about the microbiome, the bacteria in your intestine that are so incredibly important to your health. So we have lots of studies now showing that it is toxic to fish, but we've known for a long time that it is toxic to amphibians and teratogenic to amphibians. And we are now recently discovering that yes, it is also toxic and impairing the function of many bacteria, and every animal has bacteria in their guts, just like us, and therefore they are affected, just like us. And this last study was to show the effect of glyphosate on liver and intestinal enzymatic activity in the rat. And it was found that glyphosate inhibits a family of enzymes called the cytochrome P450 that are very, very essential to very basic services, processes in the cells. And just impairing this family of enzymes will cause these problems in the rat. And we have seen repeatedly with those studies that some of them have shown, repeatedly we have seen these symptoms in the rat. Gastrointestinal disorders, kidney and liver damage, infertility, and many more. And when I say gastrointestinal disorders, it's not like tummy ache or indigestion. We're talking autoimmune disease, celiac and Crohn and leaky guts. There is a couple of scientists from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology who published last year a report showing what possibly could happen in humans if these enzymes were inhibited. One of them was Dr. Stephanie Seneff, a brilliant biochemist, and she had been very interested in autism. How does it work? And she was quite alarmed to witness the rise of autism in North America, because she said that about 20 years ago, autism was about 1 in 10,000 kids. 1 in 10,000 kids was on the autistic spectrum in North America. And today it is 1 in 50. And she says it has to be an environmental factor. It is in the water, or the food, or the air. And so when she became aware of this study, she went back to the literature to study what could happen, what the biochemistry would be, what the physiology would be in human beings as well as animals. And basically she discovered that not just the top symptoms, but even obesity, depression, autism, Alzheimer, this sort of symptom could be expected. She's not saying that Roundup causes these, she says that it is a factor. It has to be a factor. And the biotech industry is very quick to be very reassuring and say, look, millions of people have eaten trillions of meals in the last 15, 18 years, and nobody has ever fallen ill. And they also talk of real science and pseudoscience. And I have never heard a more empty statement. There is no studies, there is no follow-up, there is no way of following up anything. Yes, it's true, you don't see people falling down when they come out of the restaurant, but there is no labeling, there is no way of knowing who is eating what. And there is a doctor in Seattle who has investigated and put together the numbers. He went to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia, and to get their statistics, to see how these symptoms, how are they doing? How are we doing in North America? This is all for the USA, really, not Canada. And she put together a series of curves, of correlation studies. These are not causation studies. These are not studies, really. She's just looking at how many people have this symptom. And she plotted these numbers with the use of glyphosate. And this is the use of glyphosate. Number of children with autism plotted against glyphosate use on corn and soy in the USA. And the curve starts going up mid-1990s when the crops were registered, when the use of glyphosate went up through the roof. And she has curves like this for absolutely every symptom and more. I could show you 20 of those. This is for acute kidney injury, plotted against glyphosate applied to corn and soy, etc., etc. These are correlation studies, and I think they are very alarming, And I'm doing this tour because I think the government and the regulatory agencies and you, the people, should be alarmed. I'm going to finish with a few pictures, a few things, because a lot of people ask me after my show, after the talk, it's like, what can we do? And Dr. Chopra is going to talk about that too. What can you do? Well, I mean, the first obvious thing is avoid all food that have obviously been sprayed with a herbicide and contain residues of the herbicide. So all engineered food, all engineered ingredients, to me, are suspect. And if you look into the food store, and you look at the vegetables, and none of them have been engineered. I'm not saying they haven't been sprayed with anything, I'm just saying they have not been engineered, except for sweet corn. Sweet corn has both traits, herbicide tolerance and insecticide resistance. And then you look at the fruit, and none of them has been engineered, except for papaya from Hawaii. And then you look at the meat and the dairy section, and if it is not organic, you can bet that there is Roundup in it, because all our animals are fed in factories, and they are fed engineered corn and soy. And then you look at the rest of the store, and you show me some products that are baked or prepared, or junk food, or that do not contain corn and soy and sugar, or canola oil, or cottonseed oil, or any of those. A lot of people ask me about organic. Is organic safe? And I said yes, because there is a 1% tolerance for organic. The organic movement decided very early on that they wanted nothing to do with this technology, and so the organic, certified organic produce contained less than 1% contamination. And the label natural means nothing. Nothing. It's meaningless. It could be all engineered, it could be all sprayed, it could be all whatever, and it says it's natural. It's a trick. And my last recommendation is please make your voice heard. Let it be known that you're concerned. Talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors. Talk to your MLAs, your MPs, your municipal council, and make your voice heard. Go to your grocery store. Everybody here in this room goes individually to your grocery store manager and says, where are your non-engineered ingredients? 20 years ago, there were no organic produce in the store. And now today, every grocery store has an organic section. If you demand it, they will appear. And if you're pissed off, let it be known. This, I highly recommend you to read this or some of it. It is very readable. This is a compilation of research studies. This is a genetic engineer from London, England, who got really fed up with the corporate science community churning out study after study after study saying it's perfectly safe, when he knew very well that there was a lot of studies that showed that it is not safe at all, and we should all be concerned. So he researched and put together this compilation, and this was written by a science writer. It's very easily readable. You don't need a PhD. And it is accessible at earthopensource.org. You can download it for free. Or you can pay $10 at the door and get your copy. Thank you.